Emotional control. Uh, we're just laughing here tonight. Someone told me recently, I think Mrs. Hiles said that one of the Rice girls told her recently that every time she was about to speak on something, it seemed she got fought in that very area. Well, we've been taping tonight and talking about emotional control, heart control, temperament control, and I am so weary that everything's bothering me. Absolutely everything is bothering me. And it seems so funny to be talking about emotional control and thinking, ooh, if people only knew what's going on here as we're trying to tape this. But at least we're still functioning, so I hope that we can say a few things that'll be real to me. I'll tell you that. It'll be real. Do you have those days when you think, I just can't stand it? And a lot of times, there are particular days that if we would stop to think about, they are always those same days every month. Or it's a certain time of your life. And if we would learn how to cope and control and work around those days, that would help a great deal too. Sometimes it's exhaustion and just spending too many hours on, or having too many mind-boggling decisions with very few solutions. Too many problems with and not seeing your way out, and it seems I just can't take it. And you grit your teeth, and you know what we ought to do? I really think we ought to give this all over to the Lord. And I say that, and yet I go into role play when I pray to the Lord. I might say, I can't take it, and I tell you what, I'm so disgusted, and I just don't understand why this person thought so and so, and why he said this. And then I go to the Lord real nice and say, Dear Lord, thank you so much for the day, and help us. And, you know, I think we do a role play, go into somebody else's character and really do a characterization to him and think we're impressing God, when actually these problems that we have, we ought to take to him just the way we're feeling. It's not enough just to not give other people problems, not tell them off, and not be grouchy around other people, but we can't keep it in ourselves. It'll hurt our necks, our chests, our stomachs, our backs. We'll take it out one way or the other, and we have to roll these things off unto the Lord. When you're tired, tell him about it. Just say, Lord, I don't think I can do this anymore. And I just, you know, and sometimes maybe you won't have to go ahead and do it right then. Maybe there are times you don't take on extra jobs. You go ahead and cope and try to do a regular day's work, but you don't take on extra jobs and push yourself in those particular days further than maybe you should, or push your body way beyond you should to complete exhaustion that would cause you to lack emotional control. Lack of emotional control makes you become offended so easily. So many people are offended every time. You just can't look at them a little bit wrong. They think something's wrong, and what's wrong? What's wrong? They say. Lack of emotional control makes you make a wrong choice. And by the way, people, we're going to make wrong choices. We want to make we hope that as many of our choices as possible will be right. But you just have to try to up the right choices each year. And sometimes that's just going to be, maybe it's just 40-50% right choices that it seems that you make. And you have to ask the Lord to bring that up, that you might bring that percentage up. But you're going to make some wrong choices. But lack of emotional control will cause you to make more wrong choices. And will cause you to make impulsive decisions, which you will regret later. Sometimes you feel like crying. You just want to sob. And it's at the wrong time. And you're not even sure why you want to sob. And you're out before a group of people or sitting in church, and people think, wow, what's happened? Must be something terrible at home, you know, that her husband's just killed her or something, you know. And they wonder, what's gone wrong? And you just feel like sobbing. Or at other times you feel like giggling uncontrollably. And don't seem to know what to do to get yourself into control, emotional control at that time. And you want to be appropriate. You need to be appropriate. And it's all right to cry. It's all right to laugh. It's all right to giggle. But you want to be appropriate and not cause undue concern at the wrong time for being completely emotionally uncontrolled. We don't want to be we want to be steady. We don't want to be dull, but we want to be steady. And yet we want to be a steadily rejoicing person. I started looking over my verses. I always have a dose of Scripture for all of what I think are my main problems and the main problems that I see some of the people around me having. And I looked up my patience and waiting verses. Oh, I have a lot on patience and waiting. I'm not going to read them all to you, but I have Lamentations 3:24 through 26, and Habakkuk 2:3, and Zephaniah 3:8, and 1 Corinthians 1:7, and Romans 8:25 says this, but if we hope for that we see not, then do we with patience wait for it, becoming steadfast so that our emotions won't control us, having a hope that will make us patient and help us to patiently wait. And 1 Timothy 6:11 helps me. But thou, O man of God, flee these things and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, meekness. Let's say the word again, patience, though. Patience. It doesn't seem to be a attribute that's considered very great anymore, but it is, because it lends to steadfastness and how much we need stable people. Yesterday we had a baby born in our college family, and they thought the baby might die. It was premature, and they were going to fly it into Chicago to a children's hospital. And then about an hour or so later, I talked to the mother, and she said the baby is stabilized. And I thought how wonderful it would be if Christians, if we could say, Christian so-and-so has now stabilized. How the world's looking for some Christians who are stable. Hebrews 10:36, for ye have need of patience, oh, that we do, that after ye have done the will of God, ye might receive the promise. James 1:3-4, know this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have a perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. 1 Peter 2:20, for what glory is it if when ye be buffeted for your faults ye shall take it patiently? But if when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable with God. You know those times when it seems like no matter what you do, you know you've done well, but it's just misunderstood. And when you do well and suffer for it, take it patiently. That's acceptable to God. Romans 12:12, rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer. Ecclesiastes 7:8-9, better is the end of a thing than the beginning thereof, and the patient in spirit is better than the proud in spirit. Be not hasty in thy spirit to be angry, for anger resteth in the bosom of fools. Isaiah 40:31, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Wait, patience, steadfastness. Psalm 37:7, rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not thyself because of him who prospereth in his way, because of the man who bringeth wicked devices to pass. I don't think even the word is considered a very popular word, but it's something the Lord evidently seems to feel is popular. Psalm 41, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. Emotional control. Carol Fry and I work with girls together at Hyles Anderson College, and we find that we have to work with this with ourselves all the time and try to ask God for help to have patience and to be patient for other girls to grow here at the school, and realizing how long any little thing we've worked on in our lives has taken us and how much further we have to go. That helps us. But Carol, I'd like for you to just say a few words about this thing called emotional control, something that hurts us probably with young Christian girls more than anything else, the lack of emotional control.
I live in the dormitories here at Hyles Anderson College, and each evening I get up and give devotions. And I guess the best example of when I have to go against how I really feel when I feel bad is at 10:30 at night I have to get up and give 48 girls devotions. And first of all, they're all sitting there ready to go to sleep. Lots of them have been up since 4:30 or 5. They're overtired. They've got their hair in colors and they got the grease on their face, and they sit up against the wall in the hallway and just sort of act like, oh, lady, why don't you shut your mouth? And I guess it's really hard late at night to get up there and be motivated and decide I'm going to teach them something that will change their lives. And so automatically I have to go over and say, now, I've got to get up there and do something that's going to help them, that's going to change their lives, and I've got to be motivated so that they won't sit there against the, leaning against the brick walls, and feel like, that they just want to go to bed. And so I go against, the feeling I have, which is, oh boy, I don't want to do this. They don't want to hear it anyway. They just want to go to bed. But I have to go against those feelings and get up there and really try and teach them something. And I guess living with the girls, I see a lot of problems, and I think one of the biggest things about, I guess all women, but especially these girls and young women, is the lack of emotional steadiness, being up one day and down the next, and giving in to these feelings. And Elaine Colston, the organist at First Baptist Church Hammond, she said one time that the biggest success, the thing she does that causes the biggest success in her home is that she goes against her feelings. She always is going against her feelings. In other words, you say, well, I don't want to clean the house because I don't feel like it. Well, when are you ever going to feel like cleaning the house? Or you may say, well, I don't feel like these kids at school, they say, well, I don't feel like being nice to my roommate, or I don't feel like cleaning my room today, or I don't feel like this, or I don't feel like that. And of course, here we have demerits where they are given the demerits so that they will do the job and get the character. And Dr. Hiles always says that character is doing right by reflex. It's a habit to do right, and instead of going by your feelings. And that was a new thought to me when I came here, because I just really, a lot when I was a teenager, I did what I felt like I should do. In other words, if I felt like telling somebody off, I told them off. And so many women, I guess I think about the girls at school, they get offended about something, and it ruins their whole day. And because they got hurt about something, they go around and either they don't speak to anybody and they withdraw from everybody, or they go around and have to hurt somebody else. And so it spoils their whole day, and it not only that, it lets them not be used for the Lord that day. Or then there's another type where they get angry over something, and they're so upset because a certain person used their cologne and didn't ask them to borrow it. Well, then they're mad, and their pride is hurt, and so they're mad all day, and they don't get their studying done because they can't keep their mind on it because they're so upset at this person who borrowed their cologne. And not only can they not do that, they can't do their jobs effectively, and then their whole day is ruined. And many times, 2 and 3 days are ruined. And I always tell the girls kiddingly that when they're married, the toilet's going to overflow, and they're going to be upset for 3 days because the toilet will float all over. And I think about I relate this to you wives out there, of the many things that go wrong with you, like when your washer breaks down. And see, nothing ever goes right. And I guess that you may take that as a pessimistic attitude, but Mrs. Evans has taught me, expect the worst and hope for the best. And you expect the worst to happen, and then you'll say, okay, well, I expect that and cope with it. And then if the best does happen, you can fit that into your schedule. And optimism is being able to face reality with a right attitude. And so the big thing I do is go against my feelings. And most of the time, we because we're carnal, our first feelings are negative, almost always. You know how you get up in the morning and start thinking, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, I got to do that, and you get yourself all nervous, and then you spend half the day worrying about what you got to get done, and you don't get anything done. And so the best thing to do, that I found, and Mrs. Evans taught me, is to go against those feelings. In other words, do exactly the opposite of what you feel like doing. When you feel like telling somebody off, don't tell them off.
I might say, and sometimes when you really need to tell somebody, you don't feel like doing it at all.
That's right.
And I don't mean tell off, but if you really need to give somebody, your child or the person you have on your dorm floor or your Sunday school kid or whoever it is, and sometimes you don't feel like talking to them and giving them reproof at all.
That's right.
So it can work the other way,
yes,
too. Yes,
it works both ways. And this is a good example for discipline for children, because so many times you don't really want to just take the time and sit down with the child and say to him, now this is what you did wrong, and teach him. You just rather slap at him or go send him off in a room or something. When really what they need, if you give him, like you'd be really angry at the child and just beat him. Well, that's not right, and that's giving into feelings. And Dr. Hiles, in his book about how to rear children, talks a lot about this, that you wait and send the child to his room until you're over being angry, till you can go and spend time and teach him and then spank him and discipline him. And so then I think about that with my girls, because so many times I have to do things that they need, which maybe separate 2 girls from a room. In fact, I've done that this week. Take 2 girls apart because I believe that's what they need. They don't need just to stay alone and be possessive of each other. And both of them, one is crying and hurt over it, and the other one's very angry with me. and I really didn't want to do it, but I was doing it because they needed it. And so I go against how I feel, which if I did what I wanted, if I went how I felt, I wouldn't have done that. And so many times, almost everything, it's going against your feelings. And we're so used, our society has sold us a bill of goods on this, that you ought to do what you feel like. You ought to do what you feel like. And if you haven't heard Mrs. Evans' tapes on It's a Worldly World, you ought to get that tape. And she talks a lot about the worldly philosophies that have influenced us that you don't even realize. And part of this saying of do what you feel like doing is a big philosophy of our generation. In other words, you ought to do what you feel. If you don't feel like wearing a dress, wear blue jeans. Wear what you feel like you ought to wear. Do what you feel like you ought to do. And that's the type of people that we have nowadays. If they feel like going to church, they go to church. It's always what do you feel like you ought to do. And the thing is, you're never going to feel like doing right, because we are carnal, we are depraved, and our feelings they're going to be in contrast to the Word of God. And the Word of God tells us to do what's right. And it doesn't say go soul winning if you feel like it. You go soul winning whether you feel like it or not. And there's going to be a lot of days you don't feel like it, and there's so many times when you're not going to feel like doing a whole lot of stuff. So how you feel doesn't matter, and it really hurts me for the girls on my dormitory floor to see them. Not only do they hurt themselves with the Lord when they let these things upset them and keep them from being used, but they hurt themselves with people, and the reason this isn't, I guess the reason people don't have this is it's not really taught in our homes, or we don't really learn it somewhere to have this type of self-control, that we don't give in to how we feel. And say you might feel real jealous of somebody. Well, then the very thing that Mrs. Evans teaches is to go against that and to build the person. Go to them and help them. Go to them and put them up and talk about, like if you're envious of a thing that they have good, well, talk about it. Talk about the good things that they do have. And you'll overcome that jealousy. But it's just like in Romans 17, it says, Romans 12:17 says, overcome evil with good. Well, that's exactly going against your feelings. You'd like to punch somebody in the mouth maybe sometimes. Well, let's say slap them in the face. That's more feminine. But really, in reality, you're supposed to treat them kindly. And this week, some girl came to me, and she was telling me about her roommate that steals her food. And this roommate is she's very neat and orderly, and she knows exactly how many candy bars she has and exactly how much homemade cake from home and exactly how many brownies. And so, but the roommate is the type that she wouldn't know, she could eat 8 brownies and think she ate 1. And so she comes into the room and she goes to her food and she sees that more cake is gone and more cake is gone. And it's been disturbing her for weeks now. This has been going on. So I told her, I told this girl, you go ahead and offer her the food before she has to take it. Just give it to her. Just say, just give it to her. And of course, that was a new thought to the girl. And she uses all of this. The roommate uses all of this girl's perfume, and she lets other people use it, and pretends like it's hers. So
Carol, I'm trying to sit here and think what that'd be like for what a woman.
Yes, how would it relate?
Yeah, I think like a church supper. Mm-hmm. You take your food and somebody just takes all your food and takes it home. Which happens,
right? Or you
without your offering.
Yes, or you make a real good pie, and somebody else doesn't bring something that's as nice as your pie, and your pie gets completely taken.
I mean, we play these same games. I mean, it's not just dormitory girls. It's not just young girls.
That's right.
We women, we don't get too old to play these games all our lives.
That's right. And so I told this girl, now go ahead and wrap up a little. She has a whole lot of this certain type perfume. I think it's Charlie. A whole lot of bottles. And I said, go ahead and wrap her one up and say, I know you like this, and go ahead and give her a bottle. And it sort of hurt me in a way to tell the girl this, because the other girl's wrong for taking it. But it is biblical to overcome evil with good, to go against your feelings. And so many times, in my teenage life, they always told you walk with God, but they never said how. They always taught you things, but I never knew how to. And so really this tape, Emotional Control, what they're teaching you is, what this is teaching you is to have character and to have Bible thinking so that you can control your emotions. We're teaching you how, and that's by going against these bad feelings that you have.
Now, you possibly will have a time with the other girl and try to start talking to her
Right.
about controlling and learning, and that girl probably doesn't think of it as stealing at all.
Not at all.
She just thinks she'd let everybody take her things, so she doesn't even think that.
And this reminds me of your tape, Temperament Control, because this is the thing of temperament, how one girl is so precise, she knows exactly how many candy bars, and the other girl, she wouldn't think a thing of it. You know, she would just take a candy bar and she wouldn't
and
think
would
a
be
thing of it.
hurt if she thought she was. She'd say, well, if I had something, I just leave it out, and I've had some. She'd even say, well, I've had something. And
Right.
And probably the other girl didn't take that much, though.
No.
But this girl wouldn't even know it one way or the other, the one who takes everything.
That's right.
So she'd be completely bumfoozled to think somebody thought she was stealing.
Right.
So it's counsel. You'll counsel one way. You'll take the part of the person who's not there. I'm
Right.
sure, because there's nothing you can do for the thief.
Yes.
To the one who's been having this food stolen, but there's something you can do for the one who is having the food stolen that'll help her all the rest of her life. If she decides she's just going to give to people before they have a chance to steal. But then on the other hand, you're going to take the part of the one who had this food stolen and help her to see that that's wrong, that she should wait until it's offered to her. But this emotional control thing is something that I believe God can help us with, and it'll if we'll, especially if we can get it young, it'll help us for the rest of our lives.
Another thing I'd like to say is most people, they say, well, that's not in the Bible anywhere. Well, the Bible doesn't say, number one, go against your feelings. Number two, do what you don't want to do. It doesn't say that. But if you love people, if you love people that hate you, you're going against your feelings.
You sure are.
And if you in Jeremiah, he says, get thee to the great men. And now that's going against your feelings too, because none of us want to go to somebody that's better than us and ask for help. And so almost every truth, every biblical truth is going against your feelings. And that's, I guess, why people don't get the biblical truths, because they're so... I always tell Mrs. Evans, it just doesn't seem right. It just doesn't seem right. And we sort of laugh about it, because everything I've learned here, I used to think I knew so much when I was here. I used to think I knew a lot. And but then after I got here, I'd say to Miss Evans, it just doesn't seem right. I never got this out of this. I don't understand this. And it doesn't seem right that Dr. Hiles can be so criticized and never say a word. And recently there was some problems with some battles with the church and church kids, and Dr. Hiles had an opportunity on TV to tell things he could have told, but instead protected the very people that hurt us. And it just doesn't seem right that someone that Dr. Hiles, that loves so many people, loves bus kids, loves people, and doesn't criticize, would be so criticized. And yet he comes back, and the very people that criticize him, if a man criticizes him, he buys him a suit, sends him a letter, calls him personally, and he loves him in return. It sure doesn't seem right, and none of the truths seem right, but that's the way the Bible is, and it's going against your feelings and doing what you don't want to do.
I've never seen anyone live like he does about this. I've just been in a position to see and know for sure of not just his saying somebody did wrong. He wouldn't be the one saying it, knowing that they did, and then seeing his reaction to it every time. Good for evil, good for evil, good for evil, good for evil. Someone do evil to you, you do good. Someone do evil to you, you do good. You must have to just practice that type of thing. It's so foreign. It's so against what anything that I know the Bible has always said, heap coals of fire. It's been there all the time. But to know how to do it, I mean, I used to think, does that mean we had a stove that had ashes in it and everything? I always thought about taking the little old shovel, and taking the real coals that were left there while they were hot and putting them on their heads, That's what I wanted to do right there. But to know that means overcome evil with good, and to really be able to practice that really takes emotional control. It takes being able to give yourself completely over to the Lord so he can guide and direct your thinking.
Luke 9:24 says, for whosoever will save his life shall lose it, but whosoever will lose his life for my sake, the same shall save it. And we were talking about this, about losing yourself to your children. In other words, leaving your world and entering theirs, going to your children and giving yourself to your children. Well, that goes against your feelings, because most people are too busy, most adults are too busy to just slow down and spend time with the child. Okay, and the same thing is true with losing your life. Well, nobody wants to lose their life. We all say me, I want this for me. Or I'm the one, in the neighborhood, I don't want my kids to be thought of as bad. Or I want this for my daughter. Or I want I'm upset because my girl didn't get picked for this singing group. And we want, for me, instead of wanting for other people. And so that almost every biblical truth or verse, you can see it if you ask God to give you the wisdom and look for it and listen to the leaders, that it always is going against your feelings.
Like talking about the musical group, like somebody doesn't get chosen, so your child doesn't get chosen for the musical group, then a lot of times the thing for you to do is to think about the ones who did get chosen and say, I guess there's a reason why. I guess they have a better name than we do, and try to figure out why, not knowing that, or not even realizing that perhaps maybe your child does have as good a voice, or whatever it is, cheerleading or whatever it is. Maybe your child does have, but maybe that's not the year God wanted your child in that singing group. Perhaps that's the year if your child were the singing group, they'd be in some kind of a situation where they would be traveling to the singing group and would be in an accident. And we don't know. We don't know the last chapter. So for us to be upset, for instance, when a child does not get chosen for something, and to try to sit back and say, well, I think it's because of this and this and this, and you know the Joneses are in that group, and you know who their dad is, and so probably sure they got chosen, and and that one doesn't have a voice nearly as good as my child. To ever even think that. But the minute that you would think it, not to just say, now Lord, you know how I feel about this, tell him. Tell him all about it, how you feel, and say, I don't even want to feel this way. I don't even want to keep it in my own mind and heart. It'll give me a stomach ache. Like I say, backache, neck ache, or whatever, headache, or whatever. I don't want to even think such a thing. This is what we're talking about, as far as emotional control in our own lives.
One other thing that Mrs. Evans, well, she's taught me a whole lot, but another thing that she made me think of is meeting people's needs. And see, it's not, our natural feelings are not to meet people's needs either. I mean, not to meet, everybody, meet your Sunday school girls' needs. In other words, what do they need? Meet your husband's needs, meet your kids' needs, meet your relatives' needs. I mean, as you go through the day, Dr. Howe says that the Lord brings people across your path that have a need, and you should meet it. Well, that's going against your feelings. I mean, you may not feel like meeting your husband's needs. You may not feel like meeting your kids' needs. You may not, and I always think, Mrs. Evans has been a fantastic example to this, of this to me, and working here at the college full time with a lot of girls and many demands, and you may relate to this in a busy life with kids, and if you have a preacher for a husband, well, the demands are going to be very many, but you go against your feelings and meet the people's needs, and of course Dr. Howe says that in this living for others you find real happiness, and you really do, and so it's going against your feelings again and meeting people's needs as they come along. And
I'm sure this is why wives do not meet the needs of husbands. Just talk about the need the husband has of watching football. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's coming up. We seem to have so much problem about that. Just something like that. It seems to be very difficult for a woman to give herself to the point that she enjoys her husband enjoying football. You see? Mrs. John R. Rice was talking recently about wanting to be with her husband while he watch something on TV like that, or just wanting to be with him when he was reading, and that she just liked to be around him, wanted to be with him. Of course, that is giving yourself to another person, giving yourself to that person's needs, and we're told that's stupid. We're told this is, in this day and age, you just don't do like that, and that you're really gonna put yourself down and not having any individuality. But it seems like when you lose yourself, you find yourself. It seems like when you give yourself away, you get yourself back plus. You have so much more. It seems like that the Bible principles are true, that the Bible taught thoughts are true, and that we gave ourselves to our children. When I used to go over to East Lake Park in Chattanooga and swing my daughter for hours, it seemed like, just swing and swing, and I haven't gone near a swing for a long, long time. I don't spend much time at those little swings anymore. I gave myself to swinging like that because she liked to swing, and I liked it because she liked it. When you give yourself to a person, you can like things that you don't even like, never will develop a liking for, just because you like the person. Giving yourself. Have you ever given yourself away? It's not true that you say, well, I just couldn't do that. Well, if you can't, you certainly can't be a wife, a mother. You certainly can't be a soul winner. because you're going to have to give yourself to the people you win, and you're going to have to disciple people and help people after you win them, and that's going to be giving yourself and doing things that you don't want to do and going against your own feelings. Oh, you have to go against your feelings so many times, but almost every time you go against your feelings, you have some of the best times you've ever had. If these principles aren't learned, there will not be a good physical relationship within a marriage, because there are many times when you're busy and you're thinking about something else, and you think you don't want to be with your husband. And yet, if you give yourself to your husband and really enjoy him and truly lose yourself in him, you're going to enjoy the physical relationship or anything else that you do with him that he wants you to do. It can be football. It can be going for a drive when maybe you don't want to go for a drive, or he calls you and wants you to go out to lunch and you don't feel like it. It's just giving yourself and caring about him so much and his interests. He's going to turn around and want to please you. And again, that's going to be a beautiful circle. Then I think on certain days of the month, you're sure not going to want to give yourself in any way to anybody. Sometimes you can just feel so selfish and so much like you just want to go away from everybody and not see anybody, not have anything to do with anybody. I think understanding that's so very important. I don't think we ought to give in to this. I believe we ought to fight it. We ought to know ourselves. And when we do have these feelings, but I'm finding out more and more, I always did know it had a tremendous influence on you. I've always known those days of the month had a tremendous influence on most women. But I'm realizing it more and more now as I work with girls and know that some of the terrible things that happen. We can just about figure, if we ask, that we're going to find out it's at certain days of the month. I knew that they say there's more accidents. Women have more accidents. They have car accidents. They have more. There's more shootings where women are the ones who shoot someone. I've always heard that research proved that this was true, but I'm seeing it, knowing it now for sure. Carol's a registered nurse and has talked with a lot of people about and learned a lot about this type of thing, and also is with her girls and knows a little bit what I'm talking about here. And I think we ought to be aware and know how to cope with this, even though we shouldn't give in to it. Don't you, Carol?
Yes, I sometimes think that there's two types of people: the ones who have never wanted to give in to this type of thing, so they've overreacted and compensated to where that, they would just never even give in, or never even slow down a little bit during that time, and then really do something foolish. And then there's the other ones that really give in to themselves and just baby themselves and stay in bed and don't do anything and act bad and cry and really give in. And so I don't think we have a balance on this at all. I think we have the two types. And recently a staff member was in my office and she said, I just get so depressed. I want to cry over everything. I just want to leave school. So I tell them, don't make any decisions during this time. And I was speaking with her and I said that actually at this time there is a withdrawal of hormones in your body. There's an actual chemical change that takes place. And I call it your brain is being waterlogged, and we kid about it. But really, in all seriousness, there is an added amount of fluid in all of your blood cells, all over your entire body, which makes you have the headaches or the low back pain or whatever you have. And there's actually a chemical off balance, which is needed to bring your period around. And so the very thing that is so important to your body, a woman's body, the hormone change, which is so vital to our lives and causes reproduction, is the very thing that this 1 week or a few days of the month causes you to be so off balanced. And so, like I was saying before, to go against your feelings. Now, it seems like there's two basic types. There's the ones who want to cry and get hurt over everything and are depressed, and then there's the ones who are out to kill. And they're mad about everything, or they get angry, and they get upset. And so just really recognizing the fact that you have this, or that you know you're going to be depressed, or you know you're going to be sensitive at this time, well, then get ready for it. Expect yourself to be like that. And then when something happens and you say, oh, I know why I'm like that, I'm just sensitive, this week, I'm just sensitive this week. And then pass it off and don't get all upset. Something too, I'm always saying, do what you don't want to do and don't give in to yourself and have character. Well, this would be a time to baby yourself. In other words, if you want to read a good book, well, take some time and read a good book. Or I need to get extra sleep. That always helps me. Other people, well, this one girl, she's real thin and she loves ice cream, but she doesn't always let herself have it. She can eat a half gallon all by herself. And so she doesn't like to, and she says that it feels like she feels like she really lacks character. And I said, well, you know, when it's that time and you're really depressed, and I said, what would you like to do? She said, I'd like to eat a half a gallon of chocolate chip ice cream. And I said, well, as thin as you are, is that going to hurt you? And she said, no. And I said, well, all right, if that'll help you. And so, you know, that's the time to do something that will help you. So, you know, and and again, I'm saying a balance, because I said earlier in the tape, meet other people's needs, meet other people's needs. And now I'm saying meet your own needs. And see, if you will realize you need extra sleep, you'll be a better person to people. You won't get offended. You won't get upset. And if you'll see that you need take the pressure off yourself, or not take on an extra job, or not go to a certain place that week, well, then do that. Don't push yourself to the extreme that you're gonna crack or just cry or just break down.
Or run away.
Right.
People run away. This is the time when a lot of wives disappear. I mean, we're having so many wives disappear. And they disappear, and then they feel foolish to come back, and they've done something really stupid. And so they don't, and lifetime decisions are made when maybe there has been a little trouble, but nothing this big, until they begin to just let things go out of perspective, because it is that time.
I think, too, you know, another girl this week it seemed like everybody was having their period this week. But another girl came to me and she said, Miss Fry, she said, I don't want to be around people. I just hate them. I hate them all. And she said, I thought I was doing so good. I thought I was really coming out towards people and really doing good. She goes, I feel like I'm going to go insane. I can't stand this. Something snapped inside of me. And she's going on and on and on and on. And I said, well, you know, is it that time of the month? And she said, yeah. And I said, listen, you'll get through this if you just have patience. Don't make yourself try to like people. Just try and, if you can, be alone. If you can do something you want. And I said, that'll pass. So oftentimes, if you are trying to grow and you just start to add something to your life, you can have a big regression at this time and go back to what you really are like. And or say something smart when you've really worked on controlling a smart mouth, and that'd be the time you'd really say something that you'd be sorry for.
And then a lot of times when you do that during that time, you think, what's the use?
Right.
And then figure there's no reason at all to even try to pick up and go toward what you believe God wants you to be, and just because you've had a time of regression. I think this is also, again, a time to just say, Lord, you know how I feel. You understand me. You know exactly what it is. And just tell him, I just feel like I'd like to run away from everything. Tell him, and then you don't have to run away. Tell him, and then or if you're hostile and just hatred toward everybody, and you just want to tell everybody off, well, tell the Lord he can take it. He said, cast all your cares, and this is one of your cares. And again, I think we don't take our burdens to the Lord and leave them there because we don't really ever take our burdens to him. We just take our nice little prayers to him. But now he knows them anyway. He knows how we're talking to ourselves anyway, and talking to other people anyway, and how we're thinking anyway. So we might as well go ahead and tell him, and just tell him all about it. And I believe we could get he'd give us a lot of relief right there. Then I also don't think we use doctors. Doctors maybe we have a water buildup in our body, which the water builds up on the brain, as what a doctor has explained to me, and there really is a reason for those headaches. Some of it is psychological, and we decide, okay, I'm going to be this way, so I'm going to let myself be this way, and we don't fight it, but some of it, it can be a water buildup, and you go to the drugstore and get an over-the-counter prescription, and it doesn't work, and you say, well, I guess that doesn't work. Well, women's specialists, doctors who specialize in women's problems such as these, have maybe 40, from what a doctor told me, have maybe 40 different pills for this same type of thing, and have to work with you a while to see which one would be a help to you. But there's a definite buildup of water buildup on the brain. Well, you know that because you have water buildup in your hands, can't wear your rings, or your rings are tight, and your ankles are swollen. And we know there's a water buildup, and you know that's not, it's in your mind, all right. It's in your brain. But there needs to be some help, and we can get some help that will, so that we won't have such terrible tension. Now, some of you don't even know what we're talking about because you haven't any problem with this way ever. It's just been as natural. That's wonderful. Congratulations. But put up with the rest of us, will you? There are so many these are times when you'd really feel offended. Carol, I'd like to give you some statements and let you counsel me. I'm going to make up some hypothetical situations about emotional control. Miss Fry, I just don't like the way she acted toward me. I know she doesn't like me. She just acted terrible. It's my roommate, and she just treats me like she just wishes I wasn't even in the room. I just feel like I ought not to even be in the room. I just feel so bad. I don't think she likes me at all.
Now, well, first of all, I'd say this. Have you talked to her about this at all?
I wouldn't talk to her. No, I sure wouldn't talk to her.
Well, let's say, first, the Bible says, great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them. And it's just not, first of all, you're wrong for getting offended. But you ought to talk about it with her, because I'm sure she doesn't feel like this. And the very thing you don't want to talk about, you should go and just say, ask her. Maybe you've done something that has offended her.
Well, how could I say it?
I'd go to her and I'd say, I'm probably wrong. Maybe have I done something wrong? Have I hurt you, or have I done something in the room that would cause you?
But I know I haven't.
But how do you know you haven't?
Well, I know it's her fault. I can't think of anything I've done.
Okay, I'll tell you what you do. Even if you're sure you haven't done anything, that's okay. But here's what I'd say anyway. I'd say, I don't think I've done anything wrong, but do you think I have? I'd say that. I'd just tell her how you honestly feel, and I wouldn't.
You mean like just go in and say, well, I feel like there's something between us, and I don't know what it is, and I don't think I've done anything wrong, but have I?
Yes, that sounds good. Just ask her about it, and clear out these feelings, and perhaps she's just having a hard week, and she's studying a lot, and maybe she just doesn't know how to tell you.
Now, she did have some trouble with her boyfriend.
Now, see, that could be it. And she...
You mean it might not even be against me? Or?
That's right. It might not be against you at all. And most people, they just don't know how to say it. Like, you don't know how to tell her that you don't know what the problem is, so you came to me. Well, maybe she doesn't know how to tell you that she's had a big blow-up with her boyfriend. Maybe she's embarrassed about it and can't talk about it with you.
Okay, people, do you see, if we can't, we're going to have to go down to the Barris little how do you communicate with people. We're going to have to do some acting out and some figuring how to do this, because this is why we're not getting along with one another in the church. We're using some girls that are younger girls, but I tell you, it's this word, that you relate to this very well, I'm sure. If you'll stop to think about the situations you've been in and how badly you felt toward people, how much you think they don't like you, and you say, well, they just look at me like they don't like me, and maybe they have something really wrong with them, and they're just taking it out on you. That's not right for them to do, but the thing is, we can give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, Miss Fry, but I did a stupid thing. I'll never be able to go back in that class again. It was stupid. I just did a stupid thing. What will they think of me?
Was it in front of the class, or did you?
Yeah, I just got right up and said this. It was a wrong answer, and everybody laughed because it was so wrong. It was so wrong. I'll just never be able to go back to that class.
I would think that you should just laugh. You should just laugh too. Everybody makes mistakes. We all say stupid things, and they've said them too. And if you'll laugh at yourself, they won't think a thing of it. In fact, they'll think you're sharp because you can laugh at yourself. And so,
boy, that'll be the day.
Just do the opposite. Do the opposite of how you feel. I know you feel stupid, but you're just going to have to say, well, Lord, I've done a stupid thing. Forgive me. And everybody has made mistakes, and laugh it off. I mean, you're going to make a lot of more mistakes in your life. Whole lot more before you live this life.
Well, tell me something you've done, and tell me how you laugh it off. Can you think of something?
Recently I was in the faculty and staff meeting, and which is about 80 to 90 of all the teachers, men teachers, and lady staff members, and majority of the faculty and staff were men. And Dr. Evans, our chancellor of the college, got up, and he was dismissing the meeting. He said, well, before you go, he said, I need to talk to these two girls. Then I want to come back in and discuss just with the faculty some things. And he called out a girl, and he said, Miss Fry. And so I stepped up to go, and there's sort of a small ledge that was up where the pulpit was, and I was right in front of the whole faculty and staff. I mean, I was sitting up to the front anyway. And somehow I missed that ledge, and I fell forward in slow motion in front of the whole faculty and staff of Hyles Anderson College. And then I took a desk. I almost started to take a desk with me because I started to grab on it. And some guy got up who's married to Linda Hyles, Dr. Hyles' daughter. Mr. Murphy got up and tried to help me. And so, of course, everybody just sort of looked and stared. And I was so mortified. I mean, I was just really embarrassed. And so I took a bow. And I just decided, well, I'm going to laugh. And I laughed at myself, and I took a bow like, Thank you very much. And they all got real tickled and laughed with me. And so then Dr. Evans and I went out the door, and he said, how do you spell your name again? And I said, and he said, Miss Fry, how do you spell your name again? I said, C-L-U-T-Z, Klutz. And he laughed real big. And so by laughing at myself and by making fun and taking a bow, well, that lightened it all and helped me feel better.
Okay, now, Carol, as we're thinking about this and talking about this, I mean, this is something that should help women, isn't it? All across, in churches, any place. I mean, I hope they're getting that this is typical. It's typical in churches. It's typical of any age. It's just apply it to you. When could you have laughed at yourself and laughed off a mistake instead of being completely mortified, not going back to the Sunday school class or wherever it was where the mistake was made? You're going to make some wrong choices. Some of you go to buy shoes or you go to buy a dress and come home and can't sleep that night wondering if it's the right shoes or the right dress. You worry all night about it. Just wondering whether it was the right dress, if it was too much money, if you should have gotten the other one. Is it the right color? Will it go? Do you have the shoes to go with it, or were those other shoes? Should you have bought those other shoes? And you can be torn up emotionally over some decision like that you feel might be a wrong decision. Look, you made it. You've already made the decision. Count the cost. Decide if it was a wrong decision. How long will you remember it? How much of an effect does it have on anybody or anything? And forget it. And there's a way to do it. If you'll think it through and ask yourself questions about it, you can be able to do it. I don't know. This emotional control business can be taken care of.
Mrs. Evans, what do you do?
Switch here, huh?
Yes.
You ask me.
What do you do when you have a time when you just feel like you could just break down and cry? Like, say you're in chapel and there's a bunch of people. And
yeah, I sit. You know where I sit.
Yes, in fact,
on the front row of the faculty section, where all the whole chapel can see you. Well, they can see all the faculty, and I sit right up there in the box seat where you're seen. Okay, I don't mind some tears coming down my face. I believe tears can be precious and they can be used and they're God-given, and I don't feel humiliated at all. But if I were to start sobbing uncontrollably, where I had to, just heaved and cried out, and I'd have to get up and leave, and that would disturb and take the attention away from the speaker. And there are times when maybe things go, like I say, a little out of perspective. It's a time when maybe someone else does, maybe something said by the preacher, and the preacher, people wouldn't know what I'm thinking about, of some defeat that I feel is a defeat, at the time seems a defeat, with some girl that he's just reminded me of, and I'm thinking about that. Then I have to quickly remove myself from the situation in my mind and think about something funny, or think about some problem I have that I don't have a solution for. Now, that'll calm my mind down really fast. And there are times when it's just not appropriate to cry, and certainly not appropriate to just sob and sob and sob. And therefore, I have to use some mind control and for a few minutes get my mind off of what the preacher has said and off of what that preacher has started my mind, where he started my mind going, that led me to this uncontrollable urge to cry, and put my mind on something that will sober me down really fast in the right way and cause me to gain control of myself again. I could leave chapel, I suppose. In fact, something happened last year. I cried quite a bit because, well, you know why. I'm telling you that, Carol, they don't. We had a lot of things happen here, and you always do in a family this size. We had several accidents in which we lost one student's wife and a baby, and another wife were very, very sick, and one of this wife, who's a staff member, lost 75% of her liver and is working here this year. And it's just amazing what God has done for her, but we didn't know from day to day whether she was going to live, and about the baby, and just day after day it was something more, it seemed like, throughout all the spring. And one of our young men was in an accident, and now he's had his leg taken off up below his knee, and little by little had to take more of his leg off, and things would be said. My heart would be tender toward those types of things, and I just cried a lot in chapel. Not uncontrollably, I don't believe, but I did cry a lot. Well, this summer I was visiting in Chattanooga, and a friend of mine said that somebody in Florida said that they heard I was crying a lot in chapel and wondered what was going wrong up at the school. So, I mean, that's why I'm telling you that if I'd have just sat up there and cried uncontrollably, they probably would have thought my husband was going to leave me or something. And so they're, you know, especially when you're in a position where people are wondering, what is it, what's wrong, you need to control yourself. Or giggling. When you start to just giggle uncontrollably. When I start to laugh and want to giggle, I have to think about something like my grandpa's death, or something like this that'll again sober me down. And it's fun to laugh, and there's appropriate places to giggle even, but there are inappropriate places to giggle. And like at our church, I'll tell you, our preacher's so funny. He says some things that are so funny, and his humor just, I just get so tickled, and I could just sit there and laugh way out loud. You know, already they can hear clear around me anyway. And I just have to clamp my hand off of my mouth and sometimes not think about what he's saying just for a minute, so that I won't just sit there and die laughing, you know, and cause a lot of tension, more attention around to me than to the one who's doing the fun stuff, you know. It's appropriate to control yourself and to control your emotions. And this is difficult for me because I like to laugh. I show my emotions, and it's difficult for me. Others never show an emotion. You see some people sit in church, never smile. No matter how funny it is, they never smile, they never cry, they don't do anything. And they're probably enjoying it just as much, but they just don't show it, and they don't have any problem, I guess, with this at all. In fact, sometimes I think that type of person ought to sit and dwell on something that once in a while would let a few tears come down their eyes. And maybe they need some tears. Maybe they need to show some concern. So, maybe they have it on the inside, but it needs to come out on the outside so people can see it. So either way, this emotional control business is important.
I think an important thing about having emotional control is this: if you don't care whether you influence people, it really doesn't matter if you have emotional control, because then you can afford to tell people off. And I always laugh. I have an aunt, and she is forever telling everybody off, and she gets mad at her landlady, and she'll get mad and not speak to her for 4 months and find a way to slip her the money into all sorts of different ways, the mailbox, and send over an envelope under the porch, and just anyway not to talk to her. And eventually we'll just she does it on purpose, and then feels like it's time to tell her off. And but Mrs. Evans always used to tell me that I couldn't afford to get in trouble with any person at the school, that I couldn't afford to, and that I wasn't to get in trouble with anybody. And I thought, well, good night, how am I going to do that? Because I used to tell people off all the time. And Proverbs 16:32 says, "He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city." In other words, if you can rule your spirit and have emotional control, you're greater than he that taketh a city, like a general. And so few people have this type of control. It's just rare to see. It's like Dr. Hiles when he yells out at the ushers and says, "You ushers, get those doors closed," and then goes right back to his sermon. You know, and now that's real emotional control, because he gets on the ushers and keeps control of 5,000 people, and yet he can go right back to his sermon and keep his mind on it.
In other words, it's not out of anger; it's on purpose,
right,
for a reason.
Right, and that's the way we should be. In other words, control the emotions.
1 Corinthians 15:58 says, "Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord." It's always steadfast, unmovable. 1 Thessalonians 5:16-24, "Rejoice evermore, evermore. Pray without ceasing, all the time, sameness. In everything give thanks," everything. "For this is the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you. Prove all things. Hold fast that which is good. Be steady, be stable, all the time. Same thing. Abstain from all appearance of evil." So many things that would teach us steadfastness. Colossians 2:5-6. "For though I be absent in the flesh, yet am I with you in the spirit, joying and beholding your order, and the steadfastness of your faith in Christ. As ye have therefore received Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk ye in him." Isn't it wonderful to go back to a church where you visited and you know certain people, they'll just be there doing their job, just steady. They'll still be there. They won't be someplace else. They're not running from church to church to church. They're not going from here to here. They're just going to be there. It's just such a joy to find people who are just going to be there, just steadfast. And of course, emotional control is a lot the reason why they can be that steadfast. James 1:8, "A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways." This being double-minded causes the opposite from what we're wanting here and what God wants. 1 Corinthians 16:13, watch ye, stand fast in the faith, quit you like men, be strong. I wonder if the women in the churches are having girls looking and testing them and proving them like we seem to have girls doing here. I'm sure they are, because they're girls. Some of these girls we're talking about are the girls from these churches. And this generation, they're watching. Don't they try to prove you to see if you're steadfast?
Yes.
Real.
Yes. Well, of course, one of the greatest things, they try to test you on, I think, really two main things. And that is, they try to test and see if you really love them. And they try to test and see if you really love them, the girls do. And they try to test and see if you really are going to be consistent with discipline. I mean, they don't believe it. And I guess because, I don't know if most parents have disciplined in anger when they're just mad at those kids and they're going to spank them. I don't know if it's because they don't know how to accept discipline. But constantly, I'm always being tested now. Why do you want to help me, Miss Fry? They say, why do you want to help me? And I can't believe you really love me. And one wrote a note and said, Miss Fry, I really do like when you put me in my place. She said, I'm just trying to see if you're going to be consistent. And then in parentheses, she said, keep up the good work. And so they're always testing to see if somebody's going to prove out to be the same.
Probably the things that keep us from being the same is that we live by emergency, from one emergency to the other, or from one crisis to the other. My husband helps me a lot in this. I'll think now, if we get through this one thing, we've got it made. And he always says, look, this is not our last crisis. Now, he can afford to be that way and to help us as people under him, to help us see it that way, because he sees to it that he feels things are important. Now, some of you ought not to think about that. Some of you think nothing's important anyway. You never think anything's an emergency or anything's a crisis, and you're not concerned about anything. But people who have difficulty in feeling that they have to live from emergency to emergency, crisis to crisis, need to be told this. As my husband says, this is not our last crisis. Or somebody will say, it's an emergency, And he says, if it's an emergency today, it'll be an emergency tomorrow. And, of course, very few things are really emergencies. But steadfastness, let me say this, is not being dull. It's being steady. Do you think it has to be a dull thing?
No. Well, I think the reason people assume that steadiness is dullness is because the usual steady people are dull. Don't you think that?
Yes.
Usually the steady people are dull.
Because, again, of this lack of balance.
Right. It's like in the temperament control tape.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are fun and outgoing, the reason they're that way is because they feel carefree, so they can be that way.
So they don't have to be on time to things.
Right.
They don't have to pay their bills. They just go around having fun.
Right.
So they get a bad name. People like them, but they get a bad name. They're kind of a joke.
Right, but they don't have any steadiness. And then these steady people that are the slow, steady pluggers. Well, the very thing is that they're steady, but they are also boring. But I don't think the two have to go hand in hand. And I think your husband, Dr. Evans, is a really good example of that, because he is a slow, steady, really dependable, steadfast worker, and yet he's added the joy. I mean, he's always had the joy, but I mean, he's added the expression of it, let's say, and showing more people that he has the sense of humor. And he's not dull at all. And so I guess, well, I'm always working on this myself, the steadiness comes from going against your feelings, not giving in to how you feel. Like the other day, it was 70 degrees, and I wanted to go out and take a walk around the lake. Now, that's not, some of you people who sit in your house all day, that's what you ought to do, is go outside, go visit a neighbor. But for me, I mean, at the drop of a hat, I'd leave the work and I'd go take a boat ride, I'd go take a walk, and that's the way I've always been, is to go do that. So then I resist what I say, no, I can't do that, I've got to stay with the work. And so how I've got my steadiness is making myself go against my feelings in that.
Mm-hmm. I think that the devil would love for us to be unbalanced people, and that most of us are. I know so very few that I detect in them that there's balance, that it always amazes me, and I start asking them why, what happened, what'd they do, what did your parents do? I'm just so amazed to see it, and it's so hard to get it, that I just stand in awe of people that look to be, not perfect, of course, but look to have some balance in their lives. Look to be able to control their temper and yet be firm. Look to be able to be people who can dominate but choose not to, and choose to just win people to what they need to have them to do for the work of the Lord. People who are fun but yet are on time. to things, and people who pay their bills and yet can go to a party and be a lot of fun and be somebody special at a party also. The devil wouldn't want us to be this, would he? So why don't we fool him and be this? It'll be painful. Emotional control. If you gain it, it'll be painful. I can promise you some pain, but the joy, every little bit you gain, you'll have such a joy because you'll be used to the Lord, and that's why you want it in the first place, is in order to be used to the Lord, and He is the one who can give it to you. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again I say rejoice.